but it doesn't come at the cost of us not thinking about privacy and security. And we know that like the way we think about AI right now is they're basically like interns. So you have to check its work and it's doing some crazy stuff. But would I ever give it my credit card and say, go buy stuff? No way.
Right.
So there's things we really have to think about, not only from say an AI perspective, but like product and like a human computer interaction perspective as well.
Yeah, I like to think about it as outsourcing some of that more mechanical work so that I can really focus my energy on the human work. And I think a lot of therapists who are hesitant to use it, or a lot of humans who are hesitant to use it, are afraid of sort of eroding the integrity of our human interactions and experience, and they'll put a lot of rules. I'm not going to touch that stuff. And my thinking is, yeah, like an intern, if somebody could, I've dreamt of this for so many years. My quality of life would be better if I didn't have the burden of documentation. You're listening to the Brave OT podcast with me, Carlin Nink. This podcast is all about empowering occupational therapists to step up, level up, blaze some trails, and maybe engage in a little conscious rebellion in service of our profession, our clients, our work, our businesses, and living our mission wholeheartedly. We are all about keeping it real, doing hard things, unhustling, being curious, exploring, growing through our challenges, and finding joy, fulfillment, and vitality as we do so. Really, we're OTing ourselves and each other. I hope you love this episode. Today, I'm really excited to bring you a conversation I had with Raj Paul, who's the director of engineering at Jane, where he leads the teams responsible for their clinical features, including the awesome, life-changing AI Scribe. This conversation is for anyone who's been curious about AI documentation tools, whether it's in the Jane system or in another system, but maybe you're feeling a little bit nervous about privacy, security, or whether it's ethical to use them. The reason I brought Raj on this call is because he brings a really unique perspective. He's not an OT, but his wife is. So he gets our world, and his entire focus at Jane is on applying the best and safest technologies to reduce the administrative burden so clinicians can focus on patient care. He's going to walk us through how the AI scribe works, how it came to be, and answer the questions I know that you need answered. He talks about how your data stays private and why you don't need to be afraid of this technology. We're also going to talk about something that has come up regularly in my group coaching calls in Activate Vitality. And it's this belief that for work to be valuable, it should be hard. I don't know if you relate to that, but I know my Gen X heart does. That identity as having a strong work ethic, and then faced with, but I can't do it all. So, spoiler alert, it doesn't have to be hard to be valuable. If you've been on the fence about trying AI for documentation, or you've been seeing these conversations come up in Facebook groups and thinking, I need more information before I can decide, this episode's for you. We're going to talk about consent, about security, and about how to experiment safely, as well as what it actually looks like when you stop fighting your documentation burden. Let's get into it. Raj, I'm really excited to have you here on the Brave OT podcast. And we met a few months ago, actually, at a Jane Ambassador Live event. You were speaking, and I felt really, I mean, you talked about OT. So right there, I'm suddenly like, oh, somebody who knows OT. So you have a wife who's an OT. And I was immediately captured by what you had to say at that point. But you went on to share lots of cool stuff. So I'm excited that you were willing to come here and talk to my audience.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here too. Yeah, it's interesting with my wife being an OT. And, a little anecdote, like, and I tell everyone this is when we started dating, I felt like she tricked me because she's an OT and would give me fidgets and all this stuff and weighted blankets. And then I was just like, wait, why am I so calm around this woman? And so I think she identified something in me.
The techie guy, she's using all her tools.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, can't sit still. It's just like talking about random things that don't make any sense. So, I think it worked out really well.
that is awesome.
Yep.
My husband says that I used my Jedi mind tricks to get our dog. So he was in more like, yeah, one day we'll get a dog. And I was more like, well, is like that as soon today? Like, what are we doing to make that one day sooner? And I'd need to like research and learn a little more. I'm like, okay, how would you want to research? Well, I guess, find a good breeder or, okay, cool. Should we like look into that? Maybe meet some breeders so that we feel more informed when the time comes. Yeah, yeah, sure. We go to a breeder and come home with a dog, of course. I was using motivational interviewing strategies for sure, but I didn't expect them to like, I was actually thinking for the next season.
Yeah.
But there we were with the dog. So tell us about your background and what you
Yeah.
do now.
Yeah. So I went to school for engineering and so was working on hardware, but I graduated around the dot-com crash and there were no jobs. So I took any software job I could and I followed my curiosity. And so my background in tech is actually pretty diverse. So after university, I moved out to the Silicon Valley and I worked on a web browser. And so, and then after that, got into sort of working into the nascent stages of, say, social media, then got into working at a space company, working on a platform that basically processed the images from satellites,
Yeah.
and then more on the like kind of a hardcore data, like marketing company. And then I got into AI. So
Oh,
I got into AI by taking like kind of like an engineering director role at this company that is in that industry, but it's a different role because it's very operational. But I learned a lot about, hey, the big customer problems around here. And the big unlock for me was when I realized that when, say, ChatGPT 3 came out, GPT-3, how good it was. And the light bulb went off for me at that point where it's like, this changes everything. You don't need to train crazy models. I can literally stick this, describe in natural language what I want a wall of text to do, and it'll save me a lot of time. And around that time, it's very serendipitous. I reached out to an old coworker of mine who works at Jane, and he was like, "We're doing this thing at Jane. We don't know exactly what it is. We know there's generative AI. Are you interested?" So here we are. I'm over here this 2 years ago,
yeah.
and what I've seen is just like the class of problems that AI solves, especially in clinical, when it's very documentation heavy. It's literally the crap nobody wants to do.
Nobody.
It's like
Nobody got into this work to write really great chart notes and reports.
Yeah, or even the derivative things. It's like the insurance and having the documents to back it up. It's like there's a lot of stuff that no one got into. Like you're bringing it up, like how we've been thinking about it is like you get into a profession to do something you love, and then it becomes all this other stuff kind of like competes with that. And then you're like, why am I even here?
Right. Can you tell us what exactly AI Scribe does?
Yeah. So what AI Scribe does is it allows, let's say, the practitioner to spend more time really focusing on their patient. And here's the thinking behind it is we know that documentation is like the biggest time suck. People do that at night. They're trying to catch up after work and all that stuff. But while you're with a patient, you're also trying to not only treat them, but you're trying to remember those salient facts of what's happening, right? And so that's also like when you're context switching like that, it's not great. Are you really going to have the best patient care if you're just trying to remember everything that's going on? And so what AI Scribe does is it allows you to just hit record in your browser and record the conversation with consent, of course, from your patient. And it will be that scribe that is listening to that conversation you have. And then it will generate the note based on your preferences from the template you've created.
It's the magic thing that honestly I wished as though it was a dream many years ago. One day maybe. I pictured Rosie the robot from the Jetsons cleaning our house or something, but like this, like maybe like somebody to do my notes for me was a dream. And truly, I have to say it's been life-changing. I really, yeah, it's my notes are done within a minute of every session. And that's never been the case for me, ever.
Well, it's very rewarding to hear. It's been very exciting for me to get very deep into the how our Jane customers are using it. Like I've had some exposure with how my wife works as a Jane user. But every time we're looking at this, we're like, this is something else that can be improved. But it doesn't come at the cost of us not thinking about privacy and security. And we know that like the way we think about AI and AI right now is they're basically like interns. So you have to check its work and it's doing some crazy stuff. But would I ever give it my credit card and say, go buy stuff? No way.
Right.
So there's things we really have to think about, not only from say an AI perspective, but like product and like a human computer interaction perspective as well.
Yeah, I like to think about it as like outsourcing some of that more mechanical work so that I can really focus my energy on the human work. And I think a lot of therapists who are hesitant to use it, or a lot of humans who are hesitant to use it, are afraid of sort of eroding the integrity of our human interactions and experience, and they'll put a lot of rules. I'm not going to touch that stuff. And my thinking is, yeah, like an intern, if somebody could, I've dreamt of this for so many years, if my quality of life would be better if I didn't have the burden of documentation. And it's not like I have ADHD. I'm like, I love working with people, but do I really need to spend a lot of time on that note? Finding like as I've gone in and edited my template, and then in the editing process tried to build in more like OT lens and OT thinking and frames of reference. I use a lot of ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, like integrating some of that and telling it it's starting to pull those things out and document them in a way that's better than I possibly could have before.
Yeah, I get more and more surprised. And so like one of my main uses for AI is I use it like every hour. I have Claude open, and now we're getting to a point where I think these AIs have personalities. And I think Claude, the way Claude like talks to me is better than I like it more than ChatGPT. Let's not try to diagnose that or
I've been liking Claude lately, actually, a bit more too. I've used ChatGPT for years, and now that as many as it was available, and now I've been playing in Claude too, because I'm like, oh, I like that I can put this in a safe container. It's not going out into the world. But Claude's only just gotten to know me, so I don't think it's speaking my language quite yet.
Yeah, when I use Claude, when I use it for a lot is I have all these ideas, and this is maybe from what my wife saw in me is like, hey, this dude is neurodivergent, and I'm using it a lot personally for I've got like all these ideas, and I want something to go critique it without any as little biased like for me as possible, right? I know it has its biases, but it will give it to me straight, and I found that probably has made me not only more productive, but made me more all rounded. So I'll give it a think of what I'm thinking, and then I'll just say, can you challenge me on all these different points that I'm trying to make? And I found that being very fascinating. I'm still really in control of what is happening,
Yeah.
but I've been thinking about things in a different way to connect with other people. So a lot of my role right now is to help lead and evangelize AI a little more through the product, try to do all that stuff. But it is really bringing a lot of people along for the journey. And the way I speak or communicate doesn't really land with everyone. And so this is what I've been like really digging into AI for to help me with that.
So it helped to get into the like translate your thoughts into the language that your listener or the person you're trying to present it to might need to hear it.
Yeah, that and telling it saying, this is what I'm thinking. Can you make all the counterpoints against all my points?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, that's super cool. I never thought about it like that.
I was talking while I was at pottery last week, I was talking to the potter on the wheel next to me, who he is a geneticist who actually shout out to him who is working like in some contract for OpenAI. And he was saying that that connects with ChatGPT for those who don't know. But he gave me the exact same thing. At the end, he always says, now challenge me on this. Like essentially not just saying don't be a people pleaser, because I think a lot of us are putting that in, but like poke holes in it. I want to see the holes so we can get down to something really good here.
Yeah. And I
Mhm.
think when you're working, like a lot of people don't share ideas because they're worried about being wrong. And so this is one thing that like tool I've used. So once I've done the due diligence of having something go and poke holes at everything, I'm feeling a lot more confident to roll things out or to communicate these ideas. And I think in general, this is going to be one step for like as a species or an organization for us to have better ideas. If we can't communicate, if we're too afraid to communicate what we're thinking, it's a lose-lose.
Yeah. 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 That makes sense. And what about like when you're kind of spitballing ideas or you're like, let's say you've developed some products or you've got some IP that you're trying to develop. So I'm working with a team where we are creating a program to do a particular type of assessment, but feeling a little bit hesitant to just throw the whole concept out into AI that's training the language model. I've been playing around with it inside cloud projects, feeling that was a little bit more protected. But is it even true? Is this like what's your sense on sharing your IP with AI?
Oh, yeah. So they like when you use say enterprise plans for say
Mhm.
Claude or ChatGPT, they do part of their like their promise is to protect your data. It's like they won't train on it or whatever. I do recommend though, I think ChatGPT by default shares it. So I
Mhm.
would also recommend you go through the settings of all these stuff and just verify that everything is toggled off if you want to. If you don't care, you don't care. But
Yeah.
that's what I recommend. So I have this, maybe it's a false sense of just like safety or that
Yep.
they're not going to just take my ideas and do something with it. But on the other hand, it's like my ideas aren't that great. So taking my ideas.
In the whole world of all the ideas, what, yeah, are they really, is anybody really going to pull our ideas out of the interwebs?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it really depends, right? So there's like an element of trust. Like we have even like for any company you do anything with, say you buy a service or
Yep.
whatever, they say they're going to do a bunch of stuff. And so there's this trust that they're going to do stuff like not sell your data. We just got to assume positive intent there, but also like kind of like trust but verify. So I recommend going into the settings of say of these tools and just verifying that like the permissions are how you want.
Yep. I remember a few weeks back too that there was something came out with ChatGPT. If you had clicked, like shared a link to a chat with someone, that had become indexed on Google or something. And then they went and undid that. But it was that sense of, oh, I've
Mm.
had a false sense of security. And there was that. So I think we do need to have a dose of caution, but also learn how to run with this, right? We're learning to swim as this ocean is growing around us. And I think it's inevitable, it's part of our future. And so learning how to do this and how to experiment. And then at the same time, as clinicians, we've got a duty to provide to protect private health information. And so that's where I appreciate that we're never putting client information, client names and diagnoses and like their whole situation into ChatGPT or Claude. We can't be doing that. However, we can say, hey, I'm working with somebody with a brain injury, and we need to break down the steps of this recipe into more details, into smaller steps. Can you do that, for instance? Or can you look at this sort of, this is the data of the types of clients I help, not their health data, not their names, but just we can work on thematic themes. But when it comes to helping our clinical practice, having safe, secure AI inside of tools like Jane's AI Scribe, really, we can trust that's secure. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that is secure?
Yeah. So we apply the same privacy principles that we do with effectively everything at Jane. So we have these signed agreements with our cloud providers, called BAAs. And so we know there's a certain level of ironclad trust there, right? So
Mhm.
that there's only there, no one's going to get access to the data and all that stuff. So that's baseline. And so how it works is we effectively just send the request. So with AI Scribe, we basically just send the wall of text from the conversation with the prompt from your template with basically the instructions on how to turn that into a note as a big package to say Amazon. Amazon, we know we trust with them that they have this BAA, and then they won't log anything. They will just take it and they'll reply back with just those formatted notes. So it's by design to be a very simple architecture because the less hops there are, the more
Mhm.
hops, the more likely something can go wrong. And that's one element, right? The second element is around things that we do with our just principles in general. So some of it's privacy, some of it is just like the reality of the situation and not trying to cause bad patient outcomes. In the AI terms, there's something called human in the loop. So if you use AI Scribe, we will always make sure a human is there reviewing it and signing it because that's the forcing function for someone to go and look and verify because we know it'll make mistakes. And one of the challenges for us, and I talk to colleagues who do other AI things, and it's more difficult for us to improve the accuracy. And the reason is we can't look at the data.
Mhm.
So I see,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I see other my peers like doing other things, which is less sensitive data. So they're able to pluck like data, like real like input and output from customers, and then actually improve their systems because they have
Yeah.
realistic. We have to approximate these things, and I can explain how we do that.
Right. Because you're our transcripts and our chart notes.
We can't look at anything.
Right.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
tough. It's like flying blind a little
Mhm.
bit. So we have to like procure as much like fake enough data. So one of my colleagues, the first thing he did was when he joined was like, we don't have enough like training, that's not training data, like data for us just to run evaluations against. We went on YouTube, found transcripts, right? These are good enough, right? That'll help us.
Yep.
And then from there, we were able to run some evaluations of like, oh, if we change this thing, how does the accuracy change? And we were able to do that. And
Yeah.
so that was like one element. So we had to be creative. And the second one is because we can't look at the data, right? What we know that people are getting value out of AI Scribe is when, say, the chart note that was generated was not changed at all.
Mm,
So it was generated, they reviewed it, and then they signed it, and they haven't changed anything. So what we for because we as humans can't look at it, we set up a system where the whatever we generated, we basically give it a score, and then we look, and then when they sign it, we give it another score. And if they're different or really far off, then we know that it wasn't a great output.
right.
We have to use that and have these trends to go and look through and see how do we modify these things. So then we'll add more evaluation, we'll change our things, and then we'll just try to see that number get better and better.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. That makes total sense. So that's an example of how private is. You can't see our chart notes. You can't see our transcripts. You have to grab that information about the quality of the output in another way. And then I know there's a tick box or something like how good was this or something. I also like that, like, I almost want it to stay a bit imperfect because I could easily get lazy and not review it if it was too perfect.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great call out. And that's a concern too. Is like if it and just imagine it's perfect every time.
Hmm.
One time it isn't,
Yes,
it's gonna
exactly.
be wrong, right? Have that muscle memory.
Yeah,
So
indeed.
and I think that's the deliberate friction we need to add while we're in this phase is just to make it a little bit like not too magical.
'Cause somebody asked me the other day if I felt that she hadn't started using any AI charting tools yet, and she asked me, she says, "I do a lot of synthesis when I sit down to write the note. Like, I'm starting to formulate the whole situation in my head when I start to write down the note. Do you find you're missing that?" And, like, I had to pause and think because we all do have a different process. But for me, notes were like, it was usually in the days after or the drive after that I was processing and not usually in the documentation. The document was a burden on a to-do list, a thing that I needed to get to quickly, get it done right away or get it done at the end of the day before leaving or wasn't it was never like a beautiful, well, let's take an hour to process all of this. But I was doing the processing elsewhere, but I can appreciate in her process. And so I explained that I like when I'm going through and have made sure my template that I'm using, like I got to adjust that in Jane really does actually. It's often bringing out things in the process in ways I wasn't even like, I was like, oh, that's right. That is part of this and that connects to that. And I'm impressed.
Yeah. And the fascinating thing too is AI is as bad as it's going to be right this moment. We've also observed this is because we use these models that are hosted by Amazon. It's very easy for us to switch to then when the new one comes out, we just switch to it,
Right.
and we see right away. Like we can, those that score I was telling you about. We see the change in the score by us doing nothing because what that means is it just got somewhat a little. But
New model.
intelligence is not really intelligence. It just got better, and we know that the industry is just going to get better and better. We just got to keep
Hmm.
riding on that.
Interesting. I actually just talked to I coach OT business owners, and I just talked to one this morning who she's been through 6 months of my program, and she described a turning point for her. And she was coming in with this sense of burnout and always needing to kind of that hustle up. Once you master something, then what's the next challenge? What's the next thing? But then that was in conflict with wanting to spend time with her family and coming home exhausted every day. And she was felt like she was overcomplicated at work and life and spread really thin. And she said that switching to using an AI tool for her documentation was the turning point where she was like, "Oh, I had a belief that in order for work to be valuable, it needs to be hard, and it doesn't."
Yeah.
And it's just like that was this cascade effect where she's flipped it all upside down. Instead of using my leftover energy for my family, which was more important, I'm gonna work less hard, find the efficiencies, I'm gonna find the ways to make work because it was just this turning point, and she was, like, riding bikes more, and she was going and doing more art, and she was volunteering with her kids' school sport team and all of these things, and it's just this sense of, "Oh, it doesn't need to be so hard."
Yeah. No, that's actually, yeah. I'm not going to say anything more. That's very rewarding for me to hear the team at Jane as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I asked people what they wanted to know, and we talked a little bit about some of those cautions around not putting client information into ChatGPT or Claude or anything like that, that we know how it's secure within within Jane's AI Scribe. They also asked about consent, how to get consent, that we need to get consent from people to use this tool. And we talked a little bit earlier. I'm not sure I'm qualified exactly to answer that question. Do you want to take a stab at it or share what you can on your end? And I can share a bit about my experience as well.
Yeah, of course. I think at first, check with your regulatory body.
Yeah.
So it's going to be different by state, by country, or province, or whatever. So first, check there. But I think there's also like some stuff that we need to think about as just being just general good humans. Is like, I don't ever want to be recorded without my consent.
Yeah.
So have that conversation to do that before you start a session. The other way we've seen our customers try to operationalize this a little bit is through intake forms. So they put a statement saying, hey, we use this thing called AI Scribe. It helps us focus on giving you the best patient care, and it will be recorded. Please check here if you'd like us to use this or not. So I think those are the different ways. I also think that back to the human element of it, there's a vibe too. I think if someone is recorded and if I'm uncomfortable, like I want to say, just can we stop recording me? There's these things that I think we just got to get used to, and to be able to like have the patient and practitioner to also have the courage to say, let's just not use this for now or whatever.
Yeah, that it's not a requirement. There's no pressure here.
Yeah.
This needs to be totally okay, like informed consent.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that makes sense. I think a lot of people are afraid in general. There are a lot of people who are afraid, I don't want to touch this stuff. And I think they don't even know how much of it they're already touching between when they're doing something on their phone or on the internet and that sort of thing, or even just the chat bot in whatever service they're accessing. But I think some clinicians have been hesitant to share that this is AI because they're afraid that common people's perception would be that this is not private. And so finding ways I'll tend to say like that this is a note-taking app that's built into Jane's system. It's a feature within Jane's system. So it meets all of the security standards and privacy standards that I'm required to meet as a healthcare provider.
Yeah. And I think there's other factors as well. Like some of the questions we get from our community is that, what about the implications on the environment? That's very important. It's very important for our species, but it's also very important to some people. And so I can see that some people make the decision saying, I don't want anything to do with this. And that's fine. That's your choice. So I think it's really important to have that informed consent, just so everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, that's good insight. I appreciate that. The first question I ask all my guests is, what does being brave mean to you? Since this
Yeah.
is the Brave OT podcast, of course.
Yeah. I think for me, brave means leaning into things that are uncomfortable, but you think it's the right way to approach it.
So that balance of ethics and discomfort, and it's important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of established norms in our society, and we don't question some of this stuff, right? And it feels wrong, but no one says anything about it. And so to me, being brave is just to think about what is right based on principles, and what is the situation, and can we have this I'd rather have this conversation now and be uncomfortable with the conversation, because at least we try.
Yep. I like that. And what's something brave you've done recently?
Oh, um, no, I think I'm all talk and no bravery.
I don't believe that.
Yeah,
Would you consider yourself cautious? Is that what you're relating
I
to?
I consider myself a provocateur slash optimist.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that is, like, that word provocateur it's just like causing problems and asking.
Disruptor. Yeah.
But I'm also an optimist in that way, because I'm asking those questions to try to get to something that I think everyone wants anyway,
Mhm.
and to get to a place where things are better.
So what I'm hearing in there is that optimism often is like probably countering any fear that could possibly come up, because you have a sense of this is right, and I'm optimistic that we could find an answer. So why don't we have this brave conversation?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
cool. I like that.
And this is like not recent, but I think this, for me, like in the workplace, like psychological safety is number one. And the whole reason is kind of like what I was referring to previously was like, I just think that if the best ideas don't come out and people can't say their ideas, then it's a lose-lose situation. And I think people who are mission driven are inherently good people. And in general, like all of us knowledge workers, we're generally just paid to think. Like in your job, you're paid to think. And some of the artifacts you write as a document, some of the artifacts that you do is you have a conversation with your patient and you console them or you talk to them what's going on. And like in tech, it's like sometimes our artifact is writing code. Sometimes it is writing a document, sometimes having a conversation and changing someone's mind. Right. And so but I think it's really uncomfortable sometimes in organizations to say, do we actually have psychological safety? Because, and there are symptoms of this is like when you talk to people and all these problems come up one-on-one, but then as a group, no one's talking about it. Like, wait, what is going on here? And I would say that's something that I've really leaned into is just saying, let's just have this uncomfortable conversation. I actually want to know what everyone thinks because at the end, we're all going to be on the same page and we all want the same thing.
I think that's really, I've observed actually from being at that Ambassador Live event, I haven't had as much exposure to Jane's staff other than the Ambassador team as that day. And it was clear to me that that seems to be a current through the corporate culture of creating those safe, open spaces because it's good for humans and it's good for business.
Yep. And I can say Jane really leans into that, like psychological safety. And I've been in environments where they say they do, but they don't. I can tell you Jane is not like that.
That's pretty cool. What action would you like people to take next? So thinking about the OTs who are listening, who might be curious, what should they do to explore that curiosity?
Yeah. I think before jumping into say like AI Scribe or anything like that, I'm kind of saying we should use AI Scribe. It looks good for me, but don't do it right away. First, get comfortable with the tools. So just go to say ChatGPT, go to Claude, go to whatever, go to the free ones, go to your settings, turn the permission, check the permissions, but just experiment with it. Try different things. Just get an understanding of what the technology can and can't do. And from there, you'll get an opinion of, is this going to work for you? How comfortable are you with this? And then maybe not use it for, obviously try, maybe not use it for the clinical cases, even if you scrub out any PII, but just try for different things. I think even if the objective of like, what we're doing at Jane is to help people focus on what they love, like just the efficiency of saying, I've got this thing for my kid and I got to make a schedule. You can do that through ChatGPT. That saves you some more time. So I really encourage you before you thinking about these cases, just get really used to the tools and see how else it can help you.
That's smart. And I love what you did there when you guys were trying to figure things out was pulling therapy transcripts from the internet, like from YouTube, where there are demonstrations or things like that. That's super smart, where obviously we can't experiment with those things on ChatGPT, but being able to pull those things, like that's how I ended up customizing my AI Scribe template was by using the sample transcript that you guys have in the AI Scribe and then getting the result and then taking the results and putting it into ChatGPT and saying, okay, this is the result, but I want it to be more like this. Help me change the instructions. So the instructions are this. I want the instructions to reflect this and this. I want to move these things around. I want these headings. What do I need to do? And so back and forth I went, bringing the new instructions back into AI Scribe with the sample transcript. And then that's how I ended up landing on a template that really works for me. I wrote an article about it, so I'll share it in the show notes for people. But I still appreciate your input.
Pretty cool. You're doing very advanced stuff because what you've done is you've taken a prompt and then you've asked the AI to optimize the prompt.
Right.
It's clever. That's very cool.
I've got my multiple assistants helping each other. I've got Jane and Chat, which I named Donna from Suits, because Donna knows everything. And there's Claude. And then at one point before Jane AI Scribe came out, I was using another one. Many of them have women's names.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you again. And I so appreciate you being here. I will put a link in the show notes for people who want to explore Jane, look at what that looks like. And I'll share a link also to getting good consent when using AI Scribe.
Awesome. Yeah, it was a pleasure chatting with you. It's been a fun conversation.
Thank you. You know what I really appreciate about this conversation with Raj is that he doesn't try to sell us on AI. He gave us the real information we need to make informed decisions that align with our values while meeting our needs. And it makes sense, right? His whole role is about building healthcare software using outcome driven development with safety at the center. The privacy piece, the consent piece, the environmental considerations, all of it matters. And it's okay to weigh those things carefully. I would be remiss if I didn't share with you that AI Scribe has genuinely changed my practice. I haven't had a list of chart notes waiting for me in a really long time. My notes are done within minutes of each session. Minutes. That's energy I get back for my actual life and for being present with my clients, my family, and for other things that matter, like pottery on Fridays. If you're curious about trying Jane and you want to experience what it could feel like in your practice, I've shared a link in the show notes that will give you a 1 month grace period on a new Jane account. And Jane recently added 5 free AI Scribe notes per month. This is an accessible way for practitioners to use AI Scribe and see how it fits into their note taking workflow. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with your colleagues. Send me a message, let me know how it landed. And if you'd like a copy of my scribe template or my consent process, I'd be happy to respond. Just shoot me an email. I'll have all of those details in the show notes. Thanks for being here. And as always, be brave, OTs.